will then get made available to everyone in our, oh, it's being recorded. Someone has efficiently already started that. It will be made available to everyone in this call and also be made available to other schools that turn it on. If you've got questions during the session, please put them in the chat. For those people that aren't familiar with Teams, and I think most people are now, the chat is over here on the side. So if you click that button, I'm hovering over there, the chat will appear on the side here, and you will be able to pop questions in there. I'll take questions at the end of the session, but please keep putting them in and we'll go back and answer them. I know we've got a few other turn on consultants on this session as well, so they may well chip in and answer questions if there's something small and easy to clear up. Right, without any further delay then, let's get started. So you might be thinking, well, what on earth are we going to be covering in today's sessions? We're going to look at both apps separately. For Sway, people often say, well, what is a Sway? Why am I using a Sway? How is it different from PowerPoint? Because we've all been traditionally using PowerPoint. We'll look at that in a moment. We're going to have a look at how to create that Sway, and then we're going to have a look at the end about how to export them and share them. Then we'll move on to Microsoft Forms. Microsoft Forms have got two purposes in a school context. One might be to gather information from questionnaires, and the other one might be more of an educational learning aspect, and that's around creating quizzes. You can use it for data collection and analysis. You can also share forms, and there are some really nice features, advanced features in Forms that we'll talk about, but we aren't going to dip into those in too much detail today because this is meant to be a beginner's guide, how to start using it. It's not a very deep user with using the advanced features. So with Sway presentations, they are alternative. They're an option that's available to you to make interactive presentations. Now, all too often, the go-to is PowerPoint because we've been using it for years in Microsoft Office. It's quite a heavy app. There's a lot of content in there and it can be quite difficult, particularly thinking in a classroom scenario, for pupils to be able to present something that's pleasing and something that's easy and something that's also not monotonous in the way that it rolls out. And Sway is very good for taking that away. It's accessible, it gives you prompts and suggestions and almost helps you. It's like having a little presentation guide sat on your shoulder, and it will help you to get the best sort of presentation in the shortest possible time. I, as a teacher, have used it previously in lessons when teaching in all sorts of subjects. So it doesn't have to be just computing this is limited to. This could be any subject across the school, and very successfully in the space of one lesson or sometimes even half a lesson. When the laptops have been out or we've been in an IT suite, pupils have been very quickly able to create quite a pleasing presentation and confidently share that presentation. The big difference between PowerPoint and Sway is you use storylines. So think of Sway being as a fluidic, it's a flow, it streams through, whereas PowerPoint is that jump from slide to slide. This is more of a continuous aspect with storylines in Sway. When you have it, you add cards individually to your Sway, and we'll look at doing this for real in a moment. And then you can quite easily share it and you can use it at other purposes. Quite a few schools now are adopting Sway, for instance, for newsletters, instead of creating them in Publisher, which they may have done once upon a time, or making them in Word and then converting them to PDFs. Because you can just put the link to the Sway and it can go on the website and it works on any platform. The other beauty of it is Sway takes care of itself and it scales itself to a tablet or a mobile phone. So at this point, I'm going to jump out of the presentation and I am going to go over to my Sway. When you arrive at your Sway, you might say, well, how on earth do you get there? Depending on where you land, you might land on this page, and then Sway is an app there that you can click. If you're already, for instance, using your Outlook and you're in your emails because you're using it online, it's the same way that you would with any other swap between an app and Office 365. You go up to what's called the app launcher up here in the top left-hand corner. You press the button and in there are your apps. If you don't see it listed at the top there, you might need to click on all apps and it will show you all the apps you've got available to you. But very often Sway is there and you click on it and then Sway just opens in another tab. So you land somewhere that looks a little bit like this. and you're instantly prompted to either start from a new sway or start to use some of the templates. You will at the bottom see anything recent. So for instance, there is the Turn It On webinar, and that's the one we're going to use today. And down the bottom, it's got featured ones. It tries to get you to use formats that are either flavor of the month because they're of a theme or there's something that they're being promoted. So if you want to see more templates, click on more templates and you can scroll down. When you first do it, a good way to take away the burden of scratch is to just go ahead and adopt one of these and not have to create one from the beginning. But just for the purpose of today, I am going to create one from the beginning to show you that. Someone's just got their mic on, so I'm just going to go in and I'm going to go to participants, and I'm just going to mute everyone just to stop all the mics. So that will just mute everyone at the same time. Popping back over, I'm going to go into my newsletter down here. So I just click on it because I've edited it before, and it will open up another tab. So I've still got the tab that was in there, haven't lost that, it's not overwritten. And then over here in my new tab, it will load up my sway. Now, depending on your broadband connection, sway isn't that heavy on the need to use a lot of bandwidth or have a fast connection, but it might take a little bit just to put it together. And as you build your sway, maybe you put more content in it, like pictures or a video added in. It could take a few seconds longer. Don't be worried about that. It will come up in the end. And if it comes up with it's an error message, as I had yesterday, just close down the tab, go back to the original tab, click the first one again, and it will open up. Just be patient. So when you come into Sway, you've got storyline. Storyline is your flow. It's your view of where you're building your Sway itself. So you can see, for instance, here, I've put in what's called a card. So these rectangular boxes are cards. So 2 words to learn from Sway, and you'll get familiar with, is the storyline and cards. Cards are like building blocks. Think of them like Lego bricks. And when you put each of your Lego bricks in your cards, you can add some content to them. If you want to see what it all looks like, you've always got the play button, and that previews what you've already made. So I'll just show you what I've made. So for instance, here, it's got my logo in the background. When I scroll down, that was the tiny little picture, but it's now a bigger one. It says the World of Wonder. I've got my welcome, and here is my coding conundrum. So I'm focusing this around a newsletter from Turn It On around computing. It's a fictional scenario. If I want to get back again, I press edit. And then all of a sudden, I'm back here on storyline. You can also change things quite easily from within the storyline. You can move over to design, and when you go to design, you've got over here hidden up in the corner, you get prompts, but you click styles. And then quite quickly, you can change the style of your presentation. So if you're somebody who is a details person and you like absolutely every aspect of your presentation, the way you would like it, down to the type of font, the color of font, the general theme, then you might find Sway a little frustrating because it's designed to get a quick and pleasing presentation. Hence why I used it in my lessons when I was teaching. That's where PowerPoint might suit you better. But what Sway does is it moves things around in a really fast nature and applies a different set of fonts or a different colored theme with very little effort and very little need for someone to go in and change all those individual bits that you would have to do on PowerPoint. Here it's quickly achieved in Sway. So if I wanted to change over to a red presentation, I would click there, red, and all of a sudden my Turn It On newsletter has now got my red bands at the top. Oh, I decided I don't like red because Turn It On are orange. Well, I think I'll have that there in orange instead. And you can see it's instant. It changes the content of your letters. You can always also remix things, which takes it a little bit further, where you can change your content around. If you decided you wanted to change your entire themes, they're here. And if you scroll across on the side, there will be additional themes. It's just because my broadband is a little bit slow. It's taken a while to load up. By default, your storyline will scroll top to bottom, and it will be a vertical storyline. If you are somebody who wants to change that, you can have horizontal, so you can scroll left to right. Or if you're somebody who wants to use Sway in a more of a PowerPoint format, you can change it to individual slides. The choice is yours. I'm going to leave mine on vertical. And all of a sudden now mine has changed. It looks different. I've got these subheadings on the side, whereas when I first showed it to you, I had text in the middle. But I want to actually make my subheadings stand out. So quickly, I've used the styles option there. It's over the top. I might need to now play around with the logo that I've got here, this picture, but that's all right. We can go back over to the storyline tab, and in here, collapsed inside, you get hidden details. If you press the box, out it will come. That was my logo. There is my branding. I might want to say, actually, I'm going to get rid of that logo altogether. So I could select it and I could delete it. I can take that card out. It's gone. So now I'm just left with the words at the top, and I'm also there with that. If I want to add a background back in, I can click it again and I can add a background back in. One of the other things I wanted to show you in Sway is you don't have to leave Sway to get content. It's got a search engine built into it. So you don't have to open up another tab in your web browser and go wandering off. You can go through either suggested content, or you can get something from your OneDrive, or you can use online searches such as Bing, or you can go for Flickr, which is like an image search website. So if I wanted to search for computing, press search, and then it will have a good look across the internet, and it will come up with lots of images relating to computing. So I decide on my header, I didn't want to use the logo, but what I actually want to use is something to do with computing. I'm going to click on that thumbnail of that image there at the top. I'm going to press add, and then all of a sudden it's over there and it's straight away into my Sway. I'm going to press the cross on the side to get rid of that. Well, I might want to see what that looks like again now. So I'm going to go back and press play. And then all of a sudden I've got a background now where I have turn it on newsletter coming across. That probably sits better, I think, in my head. I've now got a blocky background. Down here, I've got my world of wonder, and there's my welcome, and there's my coding conundrum. So you can see really quickly that it can change. And there's an option in there to change things like the scrolling. So there's the emphasis there. The picture I've put in is moving in and out. You can have it as a static picture, or you can have emphasis. If I wanted to have a caption over my picture, such as coding edition. One of the other things you've got in these boxes is you won't see the traditional formatting options you'd expect to see in Word or PowerPoint or something like that. You have emphasize. Emphasize is a little bit like bold, but not entirely like bold, because it will make the writing bigger when you look at it in here. But what it might do when you go to your Sway is it emphasizes the writing. So as well as it being in a bolder font, it pull out the page and maybe get bigger as you scroll down, or it'll fade away into the background. So emphasize is one option you've got available to you. Accent is another one. That's a little bit like italics in the traditional world, but it adds some emphasis to it. So if I said I wanted to have coding with accent on it, I'm going to enable that. It looks like italics here, but it would be different in the actual live Sway. You can add in other things like your bullet points. You can put hyperlinks in, or you can change your design itself. I said about focus points because this image was scrolling. Well, focus points, here's my image. You can choose where is a focus point. So if I really wanted to emphasize the wireless wedge up here that we've all got on our laptop down at the bottom, I could say that the focus of my scroll was that, and I can change how it works. And then you also get a preview of, well, that's the strip it would look like on a traditional device, and that's how it would appear on my other devices that are mobile devices. So there's my button. I want that to be the emphasis. I'm going to put that in there. That now emphasizes I want that at the center of the picture. I press the cross to get rid of it. This is all saving all of the time automatically, so I don't need to worry about losing it either. And I'm going to use the arrow at the top just to contract that and bring it all back together. I see it all as my one heading. And I press play. And now in comes my turn on newsletter. Not sure where my coding heading words have gone. I'd need to go back and look at that again, but I've got welcome, and I'd need to have another fiddle around with the words at the top. Not quite sure why that's not showing up today, but you can see as well, even by someone that's used it a little bit, sometimes it throws you a curveball. You can use it as in its collapsed state. You don't have to uncollapse it there and look at every aspect individually, but within each of these there is often more details, and those details will sit there at the bottom, so I can expand it and I can see there's the image separately, there's the text separately, and you can have alternative text or you can just view it really simplistically like that. So that's looking at some of the formatting options inside the cards. So let's add a card in underneath my coding conundrum. So down here, if I click at the bottom, I get suggested types of cards I might want to add, and they'll be promoted to you based on the last card you had in your sway. Or you can click on these tabs so you can get text cards. So the heading 1 is the main heading. Heading 2 is like a subheading. Text is just a standard text box. Media, you can embed audio in here. So maybe if you've been doing a recording for school, maybe you've been doing, let's say it's the news report week that comes around every year, and pupils have been doing audio news reports or podcasts, or you could pop an MP3 in here. So if it was on your newsletter, parents could listen to the pupils. You can embed code from other websites. So if you wanted to, instead of me having a screenshot of coding, I could go off and I could encourage pupils or parents to click on Scratch website and go in and have a go on their own. You can also upload your own content, and when you click that, it will look at your computer and it will then see what files you have, and you can then bring your own content in. You aren't stuck with the content just from Sway. So I'll go back to the plus sign. That's media. And then groups are, you can have ways of grouping it. So automatic groups put things together in the way that Sway thinks best. You can group things on a grid so you can decide where these cards go, because you can drag them around and reorder them. You've got also useful things like comparisons, and I'll show you that in a minute. Or you can have things that are stacked up. That would be pictures or boxes, cards that will, with text that will be stacked on top of each other's. They will just fall away so you can see them. You can also have a slideshow. So if you're using it for a newsletter, you could have a slideshow of pictures. Maybe it's your school production in the summer or Christmas, and it will be like a rolling slideshow that they can go through to see the pictures stacked up. So if I went to comparison is one example, I need to add an image. So I'm going to press add an image. I'm going to click on the image box over here on the side. So my comparison might be primary school. I'm going to search for that. Be mindful from GDPR point of view and consent about getting pupil pictures in there. You need to have consent if you're going to include pictures of pupils and you're going to share them outside the school. I'm going to try and change that to building. Search again. Okay, I'm going to take this very traditional looking primary school and I'm going to press add. I'm then going to click on the box down the bottom. I'm going to press image again and I'm going to change that to secondary school building. I'm going to search, and I'm going to take this secondary school here and I'm going to add that in, and that's done. I'm going to get rid of the image bit because I'm not interested in that, but actually it hasn't gone where I intended it to. It's gone as a separate card down the bottom, and I want to have it up here in the image comparisons. So I'm going to pick up my card, I'm going to drag it in and let it go. And now it's clicked into place. It's replaced that blank box. So I'm going to have a comparison between a primary school and a secondary school. And media is really useful for getting this quick reveal stuff. So if you press play, all of a sudden now, if I scroll down, I've got my welcome, I've got my coding conundrum, and I've got a comparisons box. So I've got a dragging box where I can drag backs and forwards. I've got none of that having to build this or code this or have to use another app. It's all here as well in Sway. So you can have a comparison maybe between cells. Maybe it's animal cells versus plant cells if you're teaching science. But you can build a media-rich, welcoming, pleasing presentation quite quickly. It might not be all absolutely as you would choose to if you could pick every last bit. And it is possible to do quite a bit of customization if you've got time. But what you get is a very quick, pleasing output that will then be available for pupils to share, and they can quickly feed back or present. Or if you were having a mini plenary in a lesson, you could share what you've done, and they wouldn't feel sheepish about putting content together, because in a very short space of time they've got something to be very proud of. When you are viewing that and you're in play, you can also view what it looks like in other devices. So if you wanted to see what this looked like in a different format, you could see it as slides. You can go back to home. You can preview what it looks like on a phone as well. I'm going to come back out of that now. And I am then going to talk to you about how to share it. You can share your Sway really easy. There's a share button just like OneDrive or SharePoint or Teams. And this shares the content of your Sway outside of your school or with other people inside of your school. So you can have specific groups of people or groups in your school, and that might be their email address, or it might be a group like you're going to share this with all the teachers because they exist as a group. You can have those in your organization that already have the link. So if you've already shared this once, but you've updated it, that's when you use that option. Or anyone with this link. If you're going to set to anyone with this link, you need to be aware from a GDPR point of view that if somebody got that link there and they shared it with somebody, or they decided to pop it onto social media, absolutely anyone in the world clicking that link would be able to get in and see your Sway, which or it might be your newsletter for your school. So I would recommend not using anyone with this link unless you've got an extremely good reason to do so. I would choose one of the first two options. You can then choose if it's specific people, if they can only view it, which most of the time you will, but you might want to collaborate with someone. You might say, I'd like the person to edit it because I'm maybe on a job share and we're creating this as our class newsletter for parents, and I want us both to be able to edit it. So then you can give them editing rights. You can copy that and you can put it into an email. You could post it into a Teams post in a classroom, or you could put it into a staff team. Or you can enter the email addresses down here, and then that button becomes unghosted. So I don't think I've got anyone actually in this one. I actually have. I've got a colleague I work with, Daryl. So I'd press invite, and I'd press the invite down there. If you want to get some more advanced options, press that down here. You can apply things like passwords to log in View. So if you were thinking you wanted it to be really short, really secure, you could be assured of having a password on there, and viewers, you can have it so they can see a share button and they can reshare it, or you can untick it so they can't share it. So that's your share options there. On the side, the dots with Microsoft always means there's some cunning options hidden away. So those are the quick and easy options, but you've got other things that you do. So if this was a weekly newsletter, you can duplicate it and reuse it and maybe take out some of the old articles, which saves you building it from the beginning again. You can save it as a template. So if you want to have a school template for Sways and you want some consistency there, you could save it as a template after you've built it. This is where you print your Sways as well. So if you want to get a hard copy out, Sways are meant to be digital. They're meant to be flowing storylines. They're not particularly good in printed form. It becomes quite stuffy, but if you want to, you can. If you're exporting, it will come out as things like a PDF, but again, you lose all the interactive flow in animations. Settings for Sway we won't go into today, but you can have various settings for your school or for you as an individual. Accessibility is around accessibility tools for Microsoft. So you can change to alternative texts to make it more accessible. So at the moment it's that text there, but you can have alternative text. So if you wanted, I don't know, Comic Sans maybe, or something else, because it's a more of an accessible font, that's where you add them in. Going back to those options and going down. If you need help, you can go to the Microsoft help documents from there, and then that just tells you it's you. So there's a few options of Sways. I would say with Sways, the best thing to do is play with it. At first, you'll get a few things you think, how on earth does that work? Either click in the document here, play around with these options. These options change the way that the picture displays. If you want to get rid of it, you can get rid of it there. If you want to move it around, you can go down to the bottom when you get that four-way arrow. You can drag these cards around. They don't have to stay in the order that you put them in originally. If you want to see a bit more of what's contained inside, these collapsible buttons, don't forget those, because that lets you see each of the individual elements that make up a card, such as the text on its own or the title on its own. Otherwise, you'll see it all bunched together as one in the card, and it can be a bit more difficult to interact with. So you get used to how the cards work and how they flow, and that's absolutely fine. I would say just create an experiment Sway to begin with. I think that seems like a really good pause point before I go into forms, just to go back and for me to stop presenting and just ask if anyone's got any questions around Sway, or have a look in the chat if there's anything, and get the Sway questions cleared up on their own. So there's a chance to unmute your mics. If you want to ask a question, please unmute now. I can't see any questions at the moment. Let me have a look. No, just a thanks. Is there a desktop version? Yes, it is a web app primarily, but there is a desktop version for Windows 10. If you've got Windows 7, you haven't got rid of that yet, sorry, it won't work on Windows 7. There is no desktop app apart from Windows 10, so you can install the desktop app. To be honest, desktop app takes a little bit of time to get updated, so I tend to use the online version. The desktop app, from what I've seen of using it, has the same options as the online version. You just might take a while to get some of the new features when they come in on the desktop app. So it's always in the web version first. Anyone else got any more questions? Okay.
Hi, sorry, it's Emmanuel. Can you add sound to your to the presentations, or how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, you absolutely can. Let me jump back in a minute. I'm just going to reshare. So when you come down to the bottom and you're adding a card, if you go across to media and you select audio, and then in there you can add sounds in. So they can be, think of licensing, they could be songs that you've recorded, they could be that you are reading a story, they could be pupils that have recorded something for dramatic purpose. But yeah, you can have all sorts of sounds in there. It works best with, without getting too techy, it works best with WAV formats and MP3s.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions anyone wish to ask before I move into forms? No? Okay. Right then, I am going to move over to forms. So with forms, one of the first questions you need to ask yourself is, how am I going to use it? Is it going to be to gather data, to ask questions, or am I going to use it in more of an educational context? Am I going to use it for a quiz in a class, whatever purpose that is? So we'll look at how to build a form. We'll look at how data comes out of a form. We'll talk about some of the advanced features in forms, and then we'll look at how you link forms to other applications. So you can put forms into things like Teams. We will do that directly in forms itself. So I'm just going to jump across, and for those people again that have never used forms, you go from maybe your Outlook up here to the app launcher. Forms is usually nestling as one of your apps in Office 365. I'd be very surprised if anyone's got it disabled. Most Office 365s have it enabled. You might need to go to all apps if you can't find it there. You can always pin it up here if you need to, because it's something you start to use a lot. When you click on it, it will open up in a new tab, and you'll get, hi, welcome to Microsoft Forms. And you'll get prompted to create a new form when you first arrive if you've not used it before. Sometimes, even like today, when I have used it before, it still prompts you. And you'll be presented with two options. You can either make a new form or a new quiz. So the new form is around questions, and new quiz is around creating questions. You can also make group forms. You can also get other people that share their forms with you. So I'm going to have a look at the questions type form. That's the new form first, and then we'll go back and have a look at the quiz form, which you might use with a class. You simply click on it, or if you are making this for the first time, you press plus on that screen I was on before. And then in here, by default, you get cards again, which appear like boxes. So the first thing you'll get by default is a header. So I've called it my Turn It On Demo questionnaire. You can add in logos if you wish, and we'll look at how you add those in. You can also add descriptions if you want to give people a bit more contextual information about why you've invited them to come into this form and what you're expecting them to do. And then you could create sections. You don't have to have sections, but each form gets a section 1 by default. You can make more sections if you want to make a form less daunting for people. Instead of them logging in and seeing 50 questions in one big list, you could, 50 questions in one big section list, you could make it into smaller sections. So they go through in 10 question bite-sized chunks. So then when you come in, let me scroll down and I'll go back up and go through. You simply get an add new option. When you press add new, you get choices of question types. They're already predefined by Microsoft. We'll go through and look at each of these. So you can have choices questions, text questions, ratings, dates. There are more hidden question types on the arrow on the side, and we'll go through each one of these in a moment. So you've got some familiarity with how they build. I've put in an example one for you. It saves you watching me building it. but that's essentially how you would add them in. So when they're there, they're completely editable. If you want to add a picture like I've done with the header, you press Insert Media. You can have an image, or you can even have a video. So if you're using this for teaching purposes, you might want to get a short video clip in there. They come in brilliantly. You click your image. Much with Sway, it's got search function built in, so you don't have to leave your form. You can get images out of your OneDrive if you've got things stored in your OneDrive. Or, as I've done with a lot of these, you can upload from your computer and it will upload from your downloads folder. You can choose any folder you like on your computer. So there's lots of ways to get content in. It makes it less boring, and it will hopefully and sometimes emphasize what you're wanting them to do in the question, or wanting them to see for the question, and give them a bit more information beyond text. You then put your question in, and for options here, I've got, are you a morning person or an afternoon person? And they get two options. They have to choose morning or afternoon. I could add in another option such as other, and then they can click other, but they wouldn't be able to specify what other means other than saying they are something else, and that might leave you a little bit perplexed and you want more information. Or if you wanted to add another option in there, you press the plus and in comes option 3 and you can delete it. If you want to move these options around, you hold onto that bar on the side and it brings it in, and now it's in the middle. I want to get rid of it because I don't want it there in the first place. So that's an options question. You could have multiple answers, or as we've got single answers. You can make something as a required answer for a question. So if I put that on, what it means for the person experiencing this form is that they have no choice. They have to provide an answer to that question before they can complete it. If they don't answer it, at the end it will moan at them and highlight this in red to say that this is a required question and they need to answer it. So think really carefully. You don't want to get on people's nerves. If it's something you absolutely need, make it a required question. As with everything in Microsoft, there are ... So in here, you could make these as a drop down instead of options to tick. So there's a drop down menu. You can put a subtitle in. So by clicking subtitle underneath my main question, you could give it a bit more information. So we would like to know what time of day you work best. And that just gives a bit more sort of contextualization. They see that when they look at it, and then they go ahead and answer it. So question type 2 is a text question. Text questions, they can be short answer or long answer. So if you know you're only expecting a sentence, leave it with long answer switched off. If you're expecting almost like a paragraph, switch on long answer. It gives them a box and more characters. It's up to you depending on what you're expecting to see. There's the required button, and you get the same options in here as to what's going on. If you wanted one of the options to have this whole experience being more of a structured flow, you can go in here and you can select add branching. So add branching means that if you give a particular answer in the first question, like you say you're a morning person, you could say, well, if you're a morning person, I want you to go directly to question 2. If you're an afternoon person, I want you to go directly to question 3. So the person answering afternoon would then not get directed to question 2. They would skip straight into question 3. Now, I haven't really got anything there that makes a lot of sense, so I'm going to go back. And where I've got question 2, I am going to copy that text. And I am going to, down the bottom here, press add new, and I'm going to have another text question, and I'm going to put the same sort of question, except I'm going to leave question 3 now as afternoon. I restruck the wording of that a little bit more if I had time, and I'm going to get rid of afternoon from there and say morning. And then it asks them really then to explain why they're a morning person or why they're an afternoon person. So if I went back to my branching in question 1, and I went to add branching, I've got, it picks up when I've inserted the question in. So what was question 3 is now question 4. I want to go back and redirect that, and I want that to be question 3. So now if I answer in question 1 morning, I go straight to giving my explanation in question 2. If I answer afternoon, I go straight down to question 3 and I give my explanation down there, and I would not see question 2. So branching can be quite useful to streamline the experience of the person answering. Rating questions are when you just want a quick feeling for something. So how did you find this questionnaire? Put that in there, and then they would just give it a rating out of whatever. So you can you can change your levels. You can have different amounts of stars, up to 10. It doesn't have to be just 5. You can have stars or you can have number ratings. It's up to you. We think what's more appropriate for your situation. At the moment, they're the only options there. A frequent request to Microsoft on this ratings is to have bigger ratings and also to have other options other than stars. I don't know if that will come, but at the moment, that's the options on a star rating question. You can have someone to provide a date. So you might want to ask what date they did something or what date they read a book, if this was a questionnaire about that. And they can enter their date in, or they can select from the calendar on the side if they need to scroll backwards and forwards. So date ones are about you getting an idea about a date that something was done, or the date they approached a task, or the date they completed something. Ranking questions are quite good. So you can rank things in order from preference. So you rate here it's a rating your lessons, not that you're particularly going to want to highlight a teacher, but they could rate their learning experience, and then they can drag and drop those into order. We will look in a minute as to how this appears from the final product. I'm at the moment showing you what it looks like from the perspective of building the form. Rating questions are a grid. So I am saying, can you rate yourself or self-assess or peer assess? You can use this for biology, chemistry and physics. Well, they're emerging, expected or mastery as far as their learning is concerned. And they simply tick the button as to where they are. Down the bottom here, then, this type of question was, if I go to the bottom here, this type of question is your net promoter score, which is a bit of a new one from Microsoft. So you simply tick which box you are likely to do something. So how likely you tried to do something today. They might be feeling in a really adventurous mood, so they say that they're highly likely to try doing something. And then they can say, well, what would you improve about your school? So one of the other things that you've got in there is the ability to upload files. So if you wanted to use this for someone to turn in a piece of work or show you what they've been creating, you can have an upload, and you can choose the number of files they can upload. And you can also choose the size of the file that they can upload, and then it pops it into the OneDrive. So that's another way to capture files into a form. You might say, well, that's all well and good. This all looks a bit bland. Well, there are themes as well. So over here, you can spice up your form quite quickly by applying a theme. What it gives is color bandings across the top. It also puts a background instead of it being a pale green color. I decided I would use the blue color. You've also got the ability to choose from down here, or you can press plus and you can choose your own custom theme. So you can have an image that goes into the background, which could be uploaded from your computer or a web search. And then you can also choose the custom color you would like. So then that would appear as an option down the bottom there as a custom option that you can add to your list. So there's lots of options to make your form look a bit more interesting than I've done mine today. What does it look like? So the preview button is up here for you to see it. So you can preview what it looks like on a computer, but you could also preview what it looks like on a mobile device, for instance, because Forms takes care of that. So if you know you're going to send this to parents to use on a mobile, it's there. I'm going to say what it looks like on a computer. One of the other aspects in Forms is you can have it appear in different languages. So if you know you've got parents with different language needs, I've added in French, German, and Polish. So if they want to view this in Polish, we quickly choose Polish, and all of a sudden it would view in Polish up there. So they can choose the language as it moves in between, and they would then get their form in their native speaking language. So what it looks like from this point of view is you just tick the boxes. So am I a morning person? I tick morning, and then all of a sudden the other option for question 3 gets directed to question 2. It puts me in there. My ratings question, that's what it looks like to tick your ratings. My date example, I can choose from a calendar, or I can just type the date in. My ranking question, I move things down or I move them up. That's how I re-rank the items I've been given. My ratings question, I think I'm expected in biology. I'm probably only emerging in there, but I am absolutely smashing my physics because I also love a bit of maths. So I'm mastery. I'm extremely likely to try something adventurous today. And if I wanted to upload a file, I'd click that. It would then look in my computer. I would find the file and I would submit it online. So as far as a form for making questions is concerned, you've got it there. One of the other aspects you've got is Immersive Reader, which is a Microsoft accessibility tool, is built right in. So if you click that, it will take you into the accessibility tools. Don't want my next tip. Let's go away from that. Got it. You could have it read the question to you, and you press play. So if you've got a pupil that can't read the questions, well, all of a sudden they can, because they can have it played to them. And that can be read to you in different languages as well, if you wish. So you can change your languages in here. You can have any type of language for it to display in. You could also, if you want to change the font, so I want to see that in Comic Sans because it doesn't make any sense for me. Let's say I've got a visual impairment, so I need a particular type of background. I can apply those in there as well. So there's lots of ways to use the accessibility tools, changing size of fonts. You could also, if you wanted to, pull out things like nouns and everything else. If you really want to narrow it down, you can have a line focus so that the line focus is only on the bit that's relevant to what I'm seeing. And when I read, my line focus moves with me. So there's lots of ways to get accessibility tools. If I want to get back from that, I press the arrow in the top right hand corner and I'm back in the form. That is a traditional type of form with questions on it. But the other type of form you might want to make, instead of praying plus form and getting the questions form, is we might want to make a quiz. So you press the new quiz button here, and then you might get a quiz form. Building works in a very, very similar way. You get similar types of questions, so I'm not about to go through all of those. But what you can build are things like class quizzes. This might be just to assess before you teach something. Maybe you're revisiting something from the previous year. Maybe you're checking how much the learning was embedded and the quality of the information they're still retaining and the skills that they could apply to another scenario. And you can get these. So when you preview it, in here I've got my team. So I want to know whether my angle is obtuse or acute, and I'm going to click what my description is. Then I've got my picture here, so I'm looking at coding. What does that do? Explain. So I'd expect them to explain that repeats or loops coding inside of it. And then down here, I'm going to get them to reorder the events, because this is a STEM question, reorder the events of ice melting and what the different processes it would go through with energy exchanges. And then they can submit that back in at the end. And as a teacher, you just get that handed into you. With way it looks and responses in getting data out, that's the questions. And for now, we've been focusing on either what it looks like editing us, and it tells you how many points you get on a quiz, and you can change the amount of points given on a question. So the points down here, I'm saying it's 1 point because they have to choose. When it was the ranking question down here, I'm going to say that was more points, and I can again choose if it's required. And I've got the branching options, and I've still got the adding in the media because that's how I got the picture in there. You might want to direct them to a YouTube video if that's appropriate, and always consider safeguarding with YouTube, and you'll have your own rules in school about use of YouTube. Responses come back to here. So one of the things that you will get is when a pupil answers this, you will get their responses back in. I haven't got any responses in here at the moment to show you, unfortunately, but you say one response, it would give you the average scoring from the class quiz, and you will see pie charts of what their responses look like. One of the other good features is you're not stuck with looking at the responses inside of the form. You can export everything out into Excel, and what it has are the questions listed along the top from left to right, and then the different recipients of the quiz, such as pupil A, pupil B, pupil C, or the names of the pupils, and then it will tell you underneath each column in Excel what their answers were. So you can get the data out, you can do something more meaningful with it outside of either the class quiz or the form. The sharing is pretty easy. You either decide whether you want to share a link. You can embed your form in another platform. So if you're going to put it into a Sway, you can have forms in a Sway so that the person can access the form directly in the Sway. You can email it to someone, or you can create QR codes. So if you're working in a class and you're lucky enough to have devices where you've got rear facing cameras, you could get these QR codes and you could print them out, and then to get to the form at the relevant point in the lesson where you want the pupils to check their learning, they take their device, they scan the QR code on the wall in the classroom, or you could have a few of them around the classroom. This instantly loads up as a tab in the web browser. They complete it, they submit it, and then you haven't had to have any interaction. You can carry on with teaching or working as an intervention with a small group or whatever you're doing, and they can take ownership of that themselves. The first few times they'll need a bit of support with that, but they will soon get used to it. You can also duplicate yours if you want to use it again, or you can send a link to somebody else to edit it or just view it. So the share links are pretty much open on here. The dots on the side, again, hide other options. So you have got settings. These settings are quite important. So show results automatically in a quiz means that the person completing it as a pupil gets to know how they did. It saves you telling pupils what the answers were. They get the answers because one of the things you can do in here is indicate what the correct answer is, and I'll go back and show you that in a moment. Then they can concentrate on working out why they didn't get the correct answer and not wasting time waiting to find out what the correct answer was. You can get whether their name is recorded, or they can only get put in one response, or they, in that option, if they've got it ticked for one response, they can only complete the quiz once. If you untick it, they could have a second go at it and see if they could improve. You can set a start date, in other words, when you want this to be available. So you could build this in advance and have it become visible to pupils on a certain date, and automatically you could have it become invisible on a certain date, so it closes the accessibility of it. You can also make it shuffle questions. So if you don't want them all sat on a table together saying, well, I answered this on question 1 and that on question 2, Microsoft has thought about that, and it can shuffle your questions into a different order to stop them all just copying from each other. You can also lock questions so that they can't be accessed again. You could put a thank you message in at the end, or you can have a thank you email that they get sent to their Outlook if you use email. So there's lots of options in there. Similar options on the question forms as well. One thing I said I would show you, if we went back to the questions tab, is when you are making your question, you need to indicate what the correct answer is. So you need to choose by ticking there what the correct answer is. So when the form self-marks for them, it will tell them what the correct answer is. You might want to also add a message in there when they get the correct answer to say, so maybe an acute angle is less than 90 degrees. And then they would get some sort of feedback. So again, if you want to take it one step further and you get the time, not only do they know why it's correct or why it's wrong, they get the feedback from you saying why it's correct and why it's wrong. So that is Microsoft Forms. It's a really powerful tool, and it can be used to embed into all sorts of Office 365 applications. You need to build them. Now, there are communities online that have got template ones of these that you can go and pick up to save you spending time building. At the moment, Microsoft does not have a central resource area where you can go and pick up pre-built forms. That's always the first question I get asked on these webinars. So unfortunately, at the moment, you either need to get it from one of the communities and go and pick up some that have been built by other people, or you need to make your own. So choose how you're going to use them. You're not going to use forms all the time, but there might be a really useful way to use these. And it's more secure than using other platforms such as SurveyMonkey. It's completely GDPR compliant because this sits inside the Office 365 for your school. I am going to stop sharing my screen at that point and pop back over and try and answer any questions. So I'll have a look at the questions that are in the side here. Recording will be available afterwards. We are going to put it on our YouTube channel. So there's an email that comes out following these events, and the YouTube link is in there. How about adding emojis? At the moment, I've never seen the ability to add emojis into either a Sway or a form unless you're going to go search for a picture of the emoji. It's not like Teams. There isn't an emoji that you can pop in on the side. An emoji rating on answers. Yeah, that would be like, I quite like that with the happy faces or something like that. That would be good. I know a lot of people are badgering Microsoft to get that changed and get it changed from stars to have something more meaningful. Is this is a great EAL feature? Yes, it is. The EAL is all built in. That whole scenario I showed you with what's called the learning tools or the accessibility tools, just being able to click on it, it's amazing. It means that your forms are accessible to anyone all the time. And the same will go for sways. You can turn the sways into different languages. It's just there. You don't need to do anything. They can choose what's right for them. And all of a sudden it's accessible to them, whether it's a pupil in your class or whether you're trying to get to those hard to reach parents that maybe don't have English as a first language, but they can quickly change it into their native language and then they can access it. Anybody wish to unmute their mic and ask me any questions? Stunned silence. Okay. Oh, I've got another one coming. No, just some thank yous. No, thank you for joining. I will remain in this session. If you want to, as people drop off, ask me a question, or you got something you didn't think was relevant in the whole forum, please do so. This is also a bit of a community support thing here. If you're already using Sways or you're using forms, please do feel free to unmute and share. I'm as interested in hearing what you're doing, not just you hearing what I'm doing. But thank you for coming along. We've got more of these sessions next week. There are some more on Office 365 and Google, and you'll get notified of those from either your consultant or your regional team manager. And then you'll be able to sign up on the Eventbrite like you have done today. So all it's from me is to remain is to say thank you very much for coming along. Thank you for joining in and asking questions. Take care, look after yourselves, and I will see you all next time. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, Martin.